thankfully came to put our life in order and our horses and everything else.
No pressure.
Yeah. She was new to the area, relatively this side of our hunting country. And so everywhere we would go each day, I'd have a story about where we were and what happened there, and you know, how wonderful it was that we still have these places to go through, and how lucky. And so Sam listened very carefully, and I found myself being extremely boring. What I was actually trying to do was trying not to trot. I realized that I had no more wind power to coast. So I persuaded her to think of other things rather than to go too fast. But anyway, I'm very glad to see you all here. I hope I had something to tell you that's interesting. And I was going to start with coming here to live. The war was going on, and none of the men were really around, only the ones that were involved in the hunt, seemed to me. At least my father was on a battleship somewhere in the ocean. And he had a horse, a really nice thoroughbred horse he had bought before the war, and it was in Pat McCarthy's stable, being ridden by my mother, who's terrified to ride, so we always had quite an adventure when we went out. And I was luckily given a horse, a lovely gray mare that's over there behind you, that are sitting up there against the window, right there, over the chicken coop. Wow. That's me at the age of 8, terrified. Daddy, after the war, came to see us, and we were living in what became the Cutler House over on the McCain farm, which is where Harvard Polo is now. And the house had no heat, so we huddled around the fireplace on a brick floor, and whatever was supposed to be heating something was run by my brother, who was younger than me, and it was coal. He has very bad memories of working with coal now. So Daddy said, well, I don't think we should stay here. I think I'll go talk to my friend Fred Winthrop and see if we can move to somewhere else. So he did, and Mr. Winthrop was part of a wonderful group of landowners who, when everybody disappeared off their properties, to keep them from being lost, they bought the properties, the farms. I'm sure some of you had those places, and paid the taxes on them through the war, so that they wouldn't lose them for the hunt. And it really was quite amazing. All the people that were hunting partook of this and saved really everything, I think. The trails and the tradition, and I don't know what exactly was going on with the hound kennel. And I can tell you, my father was not very good with dogs, and he was supposed to be the whip and took care of the hounds, so it's lucky that something worked out some way. But we were so lucky to have this country. And the reason we have it is because this group of people, and they called themselves the Syndicate. And I now work with land trusts here and there and everywhere, and they change the head of them often, and so they come and visit me. I work in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, I work in Alaska, and I work in Vermont. Easier to get to. So it's, all the trails were in place. The landowners that moved into these places were inspected and told they had to keep it in their hands and take care of it. That's why they were lucky enough to have it. And so Mr. Winthrop said to my father, well, yes, come and look at this property over on the other side of Hamilton, which is the one we have here. And when he got to the door, he said, "Oh, I forgot the key." Well, that's all right. He took out his handgun and shot the knob. So that's the way we started. And inside the house was a lit fireplace with wood burning furiously, trying to keep the place warm. And the people that were helping Mr. Winthrop on his property with their chickens in front of the fireplace. So we had quite a job to get the house in some kind of working order. It didn't have very much heat, and it really didn't have very good radiators and all that, but anyway, we were so lucky to get it. So that's what started riding, and I went to Helen Morse in the stable there over behind the market going down that street, Chestnut Street, or one of those streets go on your way to Legend. And I was 6 years old, and I had riding lessons there. And when I could post there, I was able to go hunting. And my father was up in front, being the whip for the hounds with Mr. Winthrop. And I was entrusted to one of the older male members of the hunt, either Neil Eyre or let's think of some of those wonderful older landowners. Bunny Sears. Well, anyway, they were so kind to us, and they read the rules at the beginning and said, you must do this and not do that. And if you break the rule, you have to go home. And I thought, great, I don't even know where I am. So I better pay attention here. And off we went, and it was really, really wonderful. And I'd never been in any kind of country like that. I'd never been exposed to going at a pace and flinging myself over jumps. And that mare took such beautiful care of me that all I had to do was what my father told me: grab mane, look through the ears, and kick on. So that was my riding experience. And we would get up, he would come down from his house to our house on his property and wake me up at anywhere between 3:30 and 4, pitch black, because we didn't have a trailer and we didn't have a groom, so we had to hack every week. So I had quite a good experience in getting to know the countryside. I never could have done that if he'd fallen off or something. I would never have been able to get back home again. But all of this just made me realize how lucky we were to have the country that we have and the property that we could do this kind of thing over. So I think that probably those first years like that is what set me on my work of trying to work with land and using land and being responsible for land and learning from the land. And it's really been quite an adventure. And I've been very lucky in the people that I've met up with, and in the fact that I have 3 children and they all ride beautifully and they love to ride, and they've done a lot on a horse and they've done a lot to work. We all had to work. The only man we had here that was supposed to be helping us was a French Canadian who we found had a still in the little red house, and so he was usually on the ground. So that's one way to learn about everything all at once. So to follow up on Ann Getchell, who spoke last week, and she was talking about how much her family cares about the property and how that came down through her family. The only other place here where the same thing has happened to me has been Appleton Farms, because my mother was in Appleton and she took it very seriously. And so when I was very young, I had to go with her and visit Aunt Fanny Appleton, which was absolutely terrifying because the house was dark, she was dressed in black, and she wasn't exactly full of conversation. So in order to behave myself, my mother would say, if you can just get through a few minutes of this, she'd be very pleased, and then I could go find Joan. So I wandered off and would find Joan in a field somewhere, sitting with all her animals around her, and so cheerful and so wonderful. And I just developed the same kind of feeling about that farm that she had. So this is my challenge now. But I've been lucky because Iris Winthrop Freeman took me to the Land Trust Alliance, which is a group of land trust people from the whole country. Every year we go to whatever state the meeting was in, and you met the most incredible people at that meeting. And they were from all over the place, from all different land trusts. And I always thought we would take a walk the day before, and get to know some of the people, and that's how I started in Alaska. They were trying to get a land trust up there in Ketchikan Bay. And you would meet all sorts of speakers, wonderful people with tax law and land protection, and everybody would be giving speeches and workshops. And one of the things I wondered when I was there, because I've always been fascinated by the Native American people, why the Native American people weren't there with us. And I have to say that a year ago, a gal wrote to me asking me if I was any relation to a Schuyler Colloredo-Mansfeld, who is one of my 10 grandchildren. And they had gone to Georgetown together and played ultimate frisbee. And so now I've become great friends with this girl, and she told me last year they had Native American people coming for the first time. And so now there is quite a large group coming. I don't know which community it is. And I work with a Native American guy who's a very old friend who's a fisherman in Alaska. And he's gotten to be very famous because he's gotten all their land back for his EAC community. And I called him the other day and I said, could you come with me to the Land Trust Alliance meeting? And he said he would. Oh, that's really going to be fun. That's probably my biggest adventure with land trusts. But anyway, so I think that working with land trust is probably the best way for me to shoulder on and do this work. I try to learn before I wade into somebody else's property and have an opinion about anything. So I'm now very interested in regeneration farming, rewilding, and this sort of thing that seems to be quite popular. And so I'm working with the Vermont Land Trust, and I work with farms up there that are doing it so that I can go and see what is going on, what gets into it, what you have to do with the soil, what kind of grasses, how many different kinds of animals are grazing on the same land, how to do the rotation, and all this. And Appleton has started to do this. There was a wonderful farmer there a year ago called Aaron Knight, and he got those fences up, and he got the water source in the middle. And I've seen a couple of these places out west that really flourish when you care for them the way they need to be cared for. One of them is a place that's in Austin, Texas, and I found out about it. I was in Peru, and my roommate, who was a wonderful girl that had protected a big piece of land there, so she kept talking about the Chicken Man, and I said, is that Colonel Sanders or something? And she said, no, he's made a lot of money in chickens, and he's bought a piece of land that is absolutely arid, just no water, nothing but juniper growing on it. And so we're trying to bring it back, and I said, well, I think I need to go to Austin, Texas, and meet this guy and see what's happening. And it was just barren land with odd kinds of grasses growing there, and he had a herd of goats, and a few cows, Texas-type cows. And he said, you know, the juniper is sucking up all the water, and so I've got to, whether it's small, medium, or large, I gotta get rid of the whole thing, and then it's gonna be all right. And I literally went back, I think a year or two later, and there was a lake, a river, a stream, and every kind of plant you can imagine that he was now selling and giving workshops, and the place is called Selah, S-E-L-A-H. And then you can look it up, Google it. It's just fascinating. So that was a long time ago now for me, and I've been hooked on this thing ever since. And the other place I went to was in Montana with a herd of horses, and they had divided the property up in sections, triangular shaped sections, with the water source in the middle. And it was really easy because all you had to do was push the cows with the working dogs towards the water source, and then there are gates up there, and you open up the gate whenever you're trying to rest and eat next. And that's a little bit what Aaron got started at Appleton. So anyway, watch out, there's gonna be an explosion over there, and I'm gonna be making a big noise. But the new woman that's running the trustees of reservations now is absolutely wonderful. She loves the land, that's what she's really concentrating on, and she's fun to talk to. And she went on some of Sam's beach rides this fall. So I think with Sam's help, we're gonna do some work there. So anyway, that's mainly what I've been doing with things. And I think what I'd like to do is, this is about our third or fourth talk like this. And I would like to open it up with your permission.
This is your brainchild, huh?
And see if anybody has any questions before I mumble on with something that you really don't want to listen to. Would you be interested in anything about Appleton? Would you be interested in the history? Why there are the trails that there are? Don't ask me about those pinnacles, because I never can get that straight. Or about our use of the countryside, or about the Trail Association and how we manage with our trails.
Susanna, Kim actually had a question for you. She couldn't be here today. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
She wanted me to ask you what was the original purpose behind the EXA, and how is the organization different now from there? How the organization was different, is different now than it was before?
In ECTA?
Mm-hmm.
Well, an interesting thing happened with that. I was trying to figure this out with Ann Getchell yesterday. We started the trail, I started working with Greenbelt and the watershed and people like that about the land, just to get more of an idea of what we had here and what was protected. And then we decided that we would open up the trails, because if we didn't, we were gonna lose them. And then I went away for, I got married, I had children, and I went away. And I came back, and the trails all had ropes and chains shutting everybody out of there. Now, somebody can chime in about this because we've all lived here. So I called up Ann and I said, oh no, I called up Freddie Winthrop, my old buddy from kindergarten. I said, Freddie, he had been working in Bangkok. And I said, you came back before me, now what the hell is going on here? And it's poor Freddie always felt a little bit browbeaten by me. I can't imagine why. He's a dear old friend. I said, well, what are we gonna do about this? And he said, well, get a job with the town. I said, what the hell am I gonna do in town? I barely got out of school. Well, he said, get on the Conservation Commission. You're interested in land, that should be a good way for you to start. So Hamilton had no map. The only map of the whole town was under glass on the wall in the assessor's office, so high you had to have binoculars to read it. We had nobody who knew anything about what was supposed to be done with the land that we did have. So I started to put together a group of people that I knew I needed. And Hamilton has a book, and it has all the residents listed, and it has their profession. So I found a civil engineer. I found a map maker. I found a land soil person. And then I went to a hearing, and I had no idea how to run the hearing. And it was over on where the Four Corners are in Hamilton, going by Legend, and then, in there, that road. I don't know the names of the road, even though I've lived here for 84 years. So, there was a guy that stood up there and seemed to know everything about why there couldn't be a change in the watershed over there. And he made perfectly good sense. So the next day I called a neighbor across the street and said, who was that man that knew what he was doing? And they said, well, that's David Thompson. So immediately I called David Thompson and say, I need someone like you on my commission. Nobody knows what we're doing. So he said, oh, I'd like to help you. Little did he know what he was in for. He was a soil and water engineer and just so helpful. I really didn't have a lot of confidence in just calling people up and getting them to try to do what I thought we should do. But so this was all a challenge for me, but working with people, no matter what what you're doing, if you can establish the same goal all together and bring together all different ideas and ways of thinking of doing things and dealing with what you've decided is your goal, it's really fun. So we had just the greatest committee. I don't know, maybe some of you were on that committee. And we really we became quite a force. We used to drive around town, and I would lie, they would drive, the two engineer guys would do the navigating of where we were going. We'd drive by these places, and one of them would say, well, that guy dumps his leaves into the brook. And then I'd say, well, that family, I think, she's a nurse for my mother, so I'm on the floor, so I don't want anybody to see me. But anyway, that's the way the Conservation Commission operated. And we had such a good time. And the town at that point had a lot of people in it working that were really fun to work with. And they were interested and helpful, so nobody was arguing and fighting over everything, thank God, because I would have chickened out of that. And that's what really started me being able to go to things like the Land Trust Alliance and find people that I could learn from. Everything is a lesson. So that's really what I've been doing. If anybody has any more questions.
How did you get people to take down the ropes and the chains and the...
It was communication. It was going to the landowner and saying, what is the problem? And people have been in the wrong places doing the wrong things. Which of course they were, because these were people that had ridden there forever, and they just decided, even though there was a new garden there, or a clothesline, or some play buildings, they were gonna ride their horse right through and poop everywhere. So we really had to work on that. thank you, I meant to say that, thank you, that's a good question.
And how did this all result in the Essex County Trail Association?
I called up Ann Getchell, said do something. I've done a lot of work with Ann Getchell. I don't know how many of you know Ann Getchell, but she's an absolutely brilliant, wonderful person, and she's 4 years older than I am. And they had a wonderful horse groom living on their property, and that guy's daughter became my best friend here, Peggy. And Peggy and I would go over there and steal the 2 ponies, black and white ponies. Seti and Jessie, and we'd take them out. That's why my nose is the shape it is. Constantly fell on my face. They're about that big. And then if we saw Ann, we'd say, quick, clear. Ann Getchell sighted. Run for the woods. Now she's a very, very dear old friend and bright as bright can be. So we've done a lot of things together. But it was a lot of work, but it was really important because you can't just run over people's land and do whatever you want. And these are the lessons that we had to learn, that I had to learn, because my experience had always been with the hunt. So not only were we smashing over people's places, but we had a pack of hounds and God knows what, and the fox was going through their living room window or something. So, oh boy, I saw a fox the other day in my field up here. Has anybody seen a fox with a very black tail?
I
Thick
saw it the other day.
black tail.
Africans.
Oh, it's so beautiful. And all I could think of watching him run across the field was, what the hell did we think we were doing killing things? You know, it was just really an eye-opener. And I was blooded when I was 8 behind the Crosby Market. And the poor thing was killed, I think, in the vet's fenced-in yard or something in downtown Hamilton. You get blooded when you're part of a hunt and you kill the thing you're trying to get. I don't like this part of it at all. I love the little bag going along with the scent. Oh, and we had a question in the last meeting about Chuck Haley. And so Robert and I went to see at Myopia, because somebody
Yeah,
said,
Becca
is that
said-
Myopia? Becca said that.
Becca said there's a
That's right.
portrait.
And it's a beautiful drawing. It's not a photograph or anything. It's a big, big picture kind of in a back hall there. And it has this little bag and a string going through the legs of the horse. And oh, if anybody ever hunted in those days and knew Chuck Haley, go see that picture.
Yeah, I remember Chuck.
Yeah, it's wonderful, Chuck. Yeah, we would, when we were starting, and just wanted to ride along, didn't have a parent, we would ride with Chuck and lay the line. And he was so kind, and he rode huge horses, great big work horses.
But he laid the line on the trails,
Yes,
and when we went out, we went like hell.
yes, straight.
We weren't going through the woods and things like if you were down in Virginia, you were riding, and that's why we were riding on people's land that didn't know when they bought that house or that piece of property. Wow.
Yeah, and then we had to run it on foot. Were you part of the people that we were running through swamps and everything?
I was back in
Russell
I was
made
still,
us do that.
I didn't get to hunt during the winter, just the fall. Had to go back to Washington.
He would say, pretend you're a fox, run along the stone wall. And I had my cousin with me from Vermont, and she was very, very tall, and she wore a long denim skirt, and we ran through this thing between Pingree School and the road. The water was up to here. I thought, oh, bye, Marion. Manage somehow, we can do this for the hunt. God.
When did the myopia hunt switch from being a live hunt to a drag hunt, do you know?
Oh, that's a good question.
Kim would probably know. 70s.
Was that with Russell, I wonder?
No, I'm 81 years old and I don't remember it ever being a live hunt.
They only did it on
No.
certain days of the week,
Oh,
mainly
okay.
Saturdays.
Be live.
Yeah, otherwise it's been dragged almost since the beginning.
Yeah, now, you know all the history of the whole thing.
Well, some of it,
You know a lot.
you know.
That's very helpful, because I remember doing both. And I remember the fact, this was really kind of interesting. We were over in the Harvard Woods, and my mother came out that time, and she was very nervous because she rode in a side saddle, and the side saddle was supposed to go on my father's horse. That was the only horse that would deal with a side saddle. And he was up in front, running around with the hounds. And so we were not going terribly fast, and we were trying to pay attention to where we were. And she heard the horn, then she heard the hounds give tongue, and then she said, "Oh, I know where they are. They're over on the other side of the swamp. We've got to get through there so we can watch them work." And that's a memory that really sticks in my mind,
Mhm.
about trying to figure out what's going
Where
on,
they are,
and
sure,
why, and
yeah.
and all that kind of thing. So I loved running the line myself. I thought that was great. And then they got on motorcycles and everything. And
A quad for a while, yeah.
yeah, that's it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Susanna, what year was it that you and your family moved in here?
Now, did I write this down? I was born in 1940.
Okay, so that was 1946, because you said you were
Yeah.
6 years old.
Yep. That's right. Yeah, and we were all hunting. It was really fun. And I tell you something that I mentioned last time, I think, about the older members of the hunt. They really made the difference. They took such beautiful care of us that didn't have anybody with them. And it was Neil Eyre, Charlie Bird, and that vintage that one of them would take us. And they made it so much fun. And we learned. And they told us, if you break the rules, you go home, and you didn't know where the hell you were anyway, so that was great. So, and then once I had my children, I had my 3 children behind me, and I had Emmy Getchell, and I had the 2 Cheston kids. And it doesn't work very well when you're on a thoroughbred that you shouldn't be riding anyway, and you're looking backwards. And then you had Betty Ellis, who was the field master, coming back through the whole hunt, hanging onto this pony's rein and saying, "Who's responsible for this child?" I would have to say, "Emmy, how did you get her all the way up there?" Poor
That's
little Emmy
hysterical.
on a Connemara. Oh my God. It's just nothing like it. We are so lucky to be where we are and have what we have. And it's really fun for me to meet new people from these land trusts that I try to do something with. And I show them the places and I explain the story. I mean, literally the bulb came on when I was doing this, saying, "My God, they were the first land trust, those men."
Mm.
And that's what they did.
The syndicate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Is there anything written at the club
I
about that?
have never read anything about that. Franz was the first one who told me about that when I was asking him about Allie,
Yeah,
who built your father's house,
yeah,
who was a master for 1 year.
yeah, and he was a beer meister who
Yeah.
went under.
Yeah.
That's how we got it, I think.
Susanna, I
Yeah.
have a question about Appleton. So I'm a real tree aficionado, and I cringed every time I go by and see more and more trees chopped down at Appleton. And I'm just wondering, talking about the new director, what's her opinion about preserving the trees over there and not clear cutting so many.
Well, I'll ask her, she's so approachable, and, it's such a different scene over there now, because, oh my
It's
God,
commercial.
it was just a nightmare, yes, yeah.
And I just see the cows out more, which is nice.
Yeah,
But I have convinced my colleagues on the select board to allow me to buy a bunch of trees for Hamilton. And when you talked about Appleton, that was what piqued my interest in on who could one talk to about thinking about the importance of the trees over there, and not they focus a lot on aesthetics and not on the fundamental value and use of a tree. So just wondering about that.
well, I plan to sort of have a conversation with her about how I would like to have the farm done in such a way, which they could have done with this guy, Aaron, where people can be taught about what they're looking at and what it is and why it is and what happens there with it. They've done those big lumpy looking things for the birds with the stumps
Ah,
all over the place, you
Yeah.
know, and that's what they think fits in just
well,
very nicely.
that's sort of my point. You're going to educate.
Yeah,
Maybe we should start with some of the people who might be more urban oriented and not rural oriented. I just worry about losing the facade not only of the trails but also of Appleton and the wonderful message it gives to people about the importance of preserving the land, trees, natural landscapes. So
well, we're on the same line with that, because they have a camp, and they have these little bunnies and things, and that's all very fine in the summer with little children, that's lovely. But to be able to go up, I mean, it was such a mess, because, the other farms that are in the trustees couldn't cope with their herds. So they just took them all and dumped them on Aaron. And so they came not castrated, not having their feet trimmed, they were too thin, and they were unruly. And he ended up with this herd of 119 cows over there. It was just ridiculous. And then they couldn't get them in, you know, so they left them out in the great pasture, so the great pasture didn't have any rest. And the babies, the calves were dying, and it was a bad winter, and they had a lot of snow. That Hope Smith is an angel. You all know Hope Smith, wonderful Hope, who is on famous road, Waldingfield Road. And she was driving, I don't know, she was in a little motor thing with her daughter, and we were just driving around as she would. And I told her that story, and she built the campus building. Yeah. And they didn't have proper winter places for such a large herd. And also, you've got to know, the cows have got to be comfortable with you. You have to have a head cow, and that's got to be able to follow the herdsman to be put and herded back and forth. And this guy, Aaron, he was about that tall, and he had a favorite cow. Her name was Angie, I think. And the last fall he was here, he brought the herd in from the great pasture, and it was, you could hear them coming. There were, 100 cows there, huge herd. It looked like, the thing of the bulls in Pamplona. They came up over the bridge, and then they saw where they were going, and then they started to stampede. It was just unbelievable. And he's running, hanging on to Angie's ear, about at her nose level. And I was standing there with his wife, Cindy, who was wonderful. We had snow stakes, and we're kind of going, laugh, turn left. So I have sympathy for the people that, if they're not familiar with them, it is a big chore to bring them in. But you've got to, and then that's the way you get the compost. Yeah. So we fixed up the sheep shed, which is a cement pad now and has a roof over where the feeding tins were, because that was filling up with mud and stones and trucks driving back and forth and everything. So they've done a lot of work there to bring it back to the point where it makes sense. And they've got the herd down. 2 local kids, I think, have Cole, and another person has taken 30 cows each. So you thought it looked much better, more manageable.
We had a good time with them hunting this year too. You were there. We had a good time.
Oh my God, was that funny?
To tell that story.
And that's because those girls don't know bullshit about me. And I'm trying to get Peter to understand that you have to have a cover.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
You're gonna tell everybody. Not everybody was there. What happened?
Oh, this is really funny. I have a very warped sense of humor. So, I'm sitting there with Robert, who's over there, and we're waiting. It was the joint meet, I think.
Yes, it
So
was.
it was a million riders, and half of them had already gone through. And I mean, we learned the hard way too here, because we had horses that were retired hunt horses, and when the hunt comes through and you don't bring your horses in or do something to manage, they go over the fence and they join the hunt. You're looking for them for a week afterwards, you know. So here are these cows, this nice little compact herd of cows that aren't part of the main big herd. And they're right there next to the driveway coming into the farm. So already half the hunt's going through. So along come the next ones, and poor Wendy has the hilltoppers and she's trying to figure out how to connect back up with the hunt. And, oh, it was so funny. Right in the corner there, next to the railroad tracks, by the railroad bridge, and the ropes go all over the place, la la. And then they go those big fat things with these big horns.
And they're all going, moo, moo, moo.
Oh my God, I was laughing
It's
about
crazy,
that.
like the herd coming towards the bridge in the middle of the hunt.
You were laughing.
That's why I don't hunt.
Anyway,
It wasn't my problem.
don't tell anybody I said that. I shouldn't be so mean, but you know, you really have to have somebody there in charge of these people. They're trying to learn, and you really don't want to have anything to do with a stampeding cow. Terrible. But nobody got hurt, thank God. I think it was all right in the end. You've got to take those cows and put them in a safe paddock or in one of the sheds, for God's sakes. The joint meat has up to 80 horses in it. Now, that's a lot of excitement. So anyway, I'm very naughty. Don't tell anybody I said I was laughing.
So she was asking where the cows with us. So the first light went out and the cows followed them. And I was with Wendy. Yeah, it was with Wendy. We were waiting to go across. And the bridge, but the cows got in between us.
Split us, and they went over the bridge.
So they were that way, and we were still here like, what do we do? Do we follow the cows now? I think we're gonna leave, so Wendy's like, I think we're gonna turn around and go the other way and go down Waldingfield Road and we'll catch up with them further down.
We'll get you. We're not going outside.
We're not going over the bridge, we don't know.
Because they had no idea, it's such a long train, you just don't know.
Oh yes, the train came through right after the cow.
I didn't mean that train, it was just such a long train of people, you know, and then I'm like, everybody gets kind of organized, and there's 2 people on the ground, and then they get up, and I'm like, okay, everything's gonna be okay, and I'm like, they're like, how do you go over this bridge, like, because they're like this, and I'm like, how do you get over that bridge, like, where are the cows now, I can't see them, they're right there, and they're gonna, you know, yeah, and I'm like, I'm like, where did they go, and what about all the spectators on the other side, like, did they get hit by the cows, like, so I get up there with Duke, and I'm looking, and I see the cows, and now there's some ATVs out there twirling around trying to find the cows, and I'm retreat back down the bridge, and then the train goes by, and I'm down the road, there's a train, and I'm like, we're going that way. I called Sam, I'm like, you keep on going, we'll find you.
And it's so funny too because you see some pictures from the photographer. It was so dry, so it was just like not only was it cows, but like dust clouds all around the cows. It was so
that was a great picture.
That was, the guy from New
That was the
Hampshire.
other one, yeah.
I think it was the guy from New Hampshire got the money shot.
Yeah.
Who from, what's his name? Oh.
Suddenly still.
Yeah.
Yes, he got the money shot.
And then he said he got out of there. He was like, it was like, cause that's narrow, you know?
Well, anyway, so that's a little bit about my life and about what I am trying to do at the age of 84. Learn. And when I was putting together the stuff from the Land Trust Alliance, trying to do the Trail Association, trying to do something about the properties and everything, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I came home to my husband and I said, I need at least 2 lawyers, and I don't even know. I'm cold calling lawyers, and this is not amusing. I'm a little intimidated by this. And so he said, well, who have you called? I said, well, I'm supposed to call Kingsbury Brown. And he said, well, that's my lawyer. And then the next one was Steve Small. And I called him, and he hung up on me, he put me on hold, he did 4 or 5 things, and then he said, called back and said, I don't know who you are or what you want, but the way I've treated you, I'll do anything you ask. And I said, oh boy, you're gonna be in big trouble with this one. And he ended up, after working with us, there were 2 great guys. And we used to go into Kingsbury's office in the wintertime, Ann and I and Peter, I think Peter was with us then, too, your husband.
Probably.
And a couple of other people, and somebody would bring sandwiches, and we'd be trying to figure out what we were doing. And these guys would come, and they were just so helpful, never paid them a cent. And then Steve wrote a book, Preserving Family Lands, on our town. We had a meeting at Myopia, this was really funny, and we had them sitting on a panel up at the top of the big room there, talking about, you know, what you should be doing kind of thing, and what your land, how it was gonna accelerate in value, and if you didn't have a plan in place and all this stuff, scared the shit out of everybody. So then we had to have another meeting to try to get these guys down and explain everything about what, you know, your responsibility was in having these farms and this piece of land. So that was really fun. And now I was just looking up Steve Small's book, trying to find the book, and he's written, I think, 4 editions now for landowners. So this is a problem. I mean, he worked all over the country. And I would find out if he was in Jackson Hole, if I saw him, I'd say, when are you flying back? Oh, I'm flying back such and such a day on such and such a flight. I'd immediately change my ticket and arrange it, so I sat with him the whole way back on the plane.
Captive audience.
Oh, damn, I was gonna get all this work done, man, you are. Anyway, that's my journey, guys, you've been very, very patient.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
This one's probably kind of dumb, but so aside from joining, like ECTA and the trustees and being a member, or, you know, giving money if that's the thing, what else can people do what else can we do to help?
Well, that's a good question. Volunteers are always needed. I mean, Essex County Greenbelt is a great place to start. That's where I started, and they are so nice. And they do the land protection. And then now what they're learning about is how do you take care of all this land, stewardship. And they were really floundering and not figuring that out very well, I didn't think, because, you know, we're all trying to take care of our places as it is, and it's not easy. But now they've got